Okay, here we are today. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. It is an honor to have you listening and watching. Listen, if you want to, really understand what's happening in the IT infrastructure world right now, you're not going to go read vendor marketing materials, right? You want to go read and hear what managed service provider engineers, what they're talking about to each other online right now in places like Reddit, Because when MSP engineers talk privately online, they're brutally honest about the problems they deal with every day. And, one of the main complaints you can read about the most online are internet outages, right? An example here is an MSP recently asked a very simple question to the community, MSP community. What do you actually do when there's a widespread internet outage? That one sentence perfectly describes the MSP experience. Clients panic, tickets flood in, but the MSP can't actually fix the problem because the outage is happening in infrastructure they don't control. In another MSP discussion thread, what happens when core infrastructure fails at a customer location? The one engineer described the impact of a single failure cascading across systems, thousands of machines and services dead in a second. That wasn't an exaggeration, right? That's what happens when everything relies on the same underlying network conduit systems that are all underground for the last mile. Monitoring systems go down, security tools stop reporting, remote desktops stop working, automation stops working, the entire stack disappears, right? It's gone, right? Another MSP summed up the state of modern IT with brutal honesty. Every single thing is breaking overnight, one fire to the next. That's the reality of a lot of IT teams right now. Cloud outages, vendor outages, carrier outages, DNS failures, software bugs. Almost all of it traces back to one underlying problem: too much infrastructure relying on the same underground conduit systems. Even minor connectivity disruptions cause major problems. One user described intermittent ISP outages like this, right? Internet goes out just long enough to disconnect work calls. And we all know what happens when you're on a video call and gets disconnected, or you have choppy, garbly audio on a voice call. It's brutal, That's the modern business environment right now. Video calls drop, remote desktops disconnect, cloud applications freeze, and productivity collapses instantly, and people freak out, Most MSPs, most managed service provider conversations online focus on AI tools, cybersecurity platforms, automation stacks, cloud infrastructure, but the engineers themselves keep circling back to the same hidden issue: network topology. If every system depends on the same underground conduit system infrastructure, the entire stack fails together, right? This is where the conversation becomes interesting online, because when you start thinking about network topology instead of just bandwidth, you start asking different questions, not just how fast is the internet, but what happens when the conduit underground gets cut? What happens when the carrier goes down? What happens if there's a regional outage, right? That's where technologies like fixed wireless fiber change the architecture. Instead of relying exclusively on underground conduit system infrastructure, you introduce an entirely different network path: rooftop to rooftop, dedicated ultra low latency connectivity, independent routes going back to two different data centers, separate data centers, real-time auto failover between each connection. That's amazing. The most interesting thing about MSP conversations happening right now online, you can go look online yourself. They see the outages, they see the topology issues, they see how fragile centralized infrastructure has become. The next evolution in network architecture isn't just faster internet, it's smarter path design. It is smarter path design, because when the network path disappears, everything disappears with it. Here's the reality, right? Your cybersecurity stack might be redundant. Your cloud infrastructure might be redundant. Your servers might be redundant. But if your internet path isn't diverse, None of that redundancy matters. You need diverse connectivity, and that is where fixed wireless fiber shines. With that, you know what it's time for, people? I'll tell you, it's time to go sell something.